Good afternoon, the audience of Conflict and Resilience Research Institute Canada. We welcome all of you today to join us in listening one of the fantastic research paper and findings that we have recently gone through, written and led by Pauline Nemkova from University of Texas. And this is a wonderful moment for us for two reasons. One is the topic itself is very contemporary, and also Polly came to our webinar before when we invited her to present the initial findings of our research. And at that time, we were running a Department of Heritage funded digital citizenship project. Before we formally introduce Polly, let me do the treaty recognition. Conflict and Resilience Research Institute Canada is located on original lands of Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene people, and on the homeland of Métis Nation. We are all promise-bound to work together with our Indigenous people within the broader concept and spirit of truth and reconciliation. With this one, let me introduce our speaker today. Pauline Nemkova is a PhD candidate in AI at the University of North Texas and data science intern at the Crisis Bureau of the United Nations Development Program. Her research is focused on machine learning and in particular on natural language processing. Being native to Belarus, she could not stay away from the recent Russia-Ukraine aggression and initiated a project on analysis of language of war. And this is really fascinating. The audience, her joint work was published titling Detecting Human Rights Violation on Social Media During Russia-Ukraine War. And this was published very recently. And I'm very delighted to listen to the presentation that she prepared. And as I said, it just fits into the Creek's broader work and research project that we recently finished with regards to understanding how propaganda and disinformation impacts and the lives of people abroad and also in Russia and Ukraine. So without further ado, let me welcome Pauline Nemkova to the floor. Polly, floor is yours, and once you like to put the presentations or slides up, just do let me know. But before that, say something for our audience. What motivates you for this research? And you are originally from Belarus, we understand, and how the war impacted you personally.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Ahmed, for having me. I'm really happy to have opportunity to share research of me and my colleagues. I think the more people know about research, the better it is for the research. So as you mentioned, I'm originally from Belarus, and I was in the middle of my PhD studies when the war started. And also, as you mentioned, my expertise is natural language processing. So when the war started, I was just following all the news, and most of the news in that area we are getting from different kind of messengers. Then because official news media are not always truthful. So one of the messengers that is really common for getting any information is Telegram. So when I realized that a lot of different information is coming from that messenger, but there is not really research ever done on processing data from those channels, I just realized that this is such a interesting and an important area to research in that we immediately joined the effort to analyze that data from Telegram. And personally, of course, I grew up in Belarus, but I lived in Kiev for 2 years, and then I lived in St. Petersburg for 3 years. So all of that, um, all of this conflict is affecting me personally from multiple sides, because it's all. I think not just me, but everybody who is close to that area, because we all have relatives among the borders. If it doesn't matter if you're from Belarus or Russia, Ukraine, they always have relatives around those countries. So I think it's been heartbreaking for most of us. So I guess me diverting my research towards this topic, it's just kind of my way of contributing, at least from what I can with my skill and my expertise. So yeah, with that, probably I can move forward to the slides. There is small introduction of me there as well.
Thank you so much. It's really important because many of us are impacted by the war, and especially in Canada, we have hosted a large number of displaced persons from the war. So we totally understand Polly as she describes how it impacts. So without further ado, let's have her slides, and she's going to discuss her findings, methodology, and the future, potentials of the project in terms of joint collaboration. Here you go.
Sure, thank you so much. So first of all, I wanna probably point out that I prepared those slides to, although it's a technical research, right? We are all computer scientists here. All the authors of my paper are computer scientists. But I try to prepare the slides in a way that anybody who is listening to this presentation do not have to have knowledge of computer science or artificial intelligence. I will do my best to understand, to explain in really general terms what's going on and why it is important and how it can be useful. So, as Dr. Ahmed pointed out, I did make a presentation here earlier with the earliest stage of this paper. This time, I'm presenting next development stage of the paper, but also I think I twisted the whole approach of presenting here just to take a look from a different side, which I think is also important. So therefore, the title of slides for today is AI and plus humans collaboration for protecting human rights. Because before I was mostly focused on AI for human rights, but I believe that here the best results can be achieved only in a collaboration. Again, a little bit about me. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of North Texas. Most of my research is done within the area of natural language processing, which basically means that all of the AI that I'm doing with textual information. Also, I recently joined as a data scientist at the United Nations for the Crisis Prediction Group. And overall, I've been doing different civil activism in Europe and US and back home in Belarus for over 10 years. And overall, I'm passionate about world peace and how we can achieve that through AI. So that's the paper that kind of going to be a focus of today's presentation. I added the link. I'm not sure it's clickable on this video, but I guess maybe Dr. Ahmed later can add a link in the description. Me and four of my colleagues helped me to prepare this research that I will go over today. I will start with some highlights that are coming from the previous uh, previous presentation that I did. So if you listened to me before, some portion of it may be similar, just because I want to give the overview of the original setup of the research, and then I will move to the improvement that we did, and also the future direction that we are planning to go to. So the overall idea, as I mentioned earlier, was to take the data, textual data that seems to be really very interesting and valuable for us as researchers from Telegram. So if you are not, I mean, if you're not familiar with Telegram, it's something similar to WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, but the only difference that there we can have something like public channels. So in public channels, um, uh, posts are mostly coming from the authors. So all the participants cannot just post there, just one author. Usually publish news, for example, or some kind of message that has the news in it. And also those posts can be reposted, for example, can be forwarded to somebody else. So those channels, all the channels that I used here are publicly available. So they are open, and anybody who has an account or even don't have account can open and see what's inside of those channels. Also, it's important probably to point out why another reason why this social media could be really interesting to research is that that's the only secured or the only safe messenger in Russia or Belarus, where you can read news and will not and also exchange messages and not be your account would be more or less secured. In Ukraine, it's slightly easier. They don't have that much problem with that as Russia and Belarus. So therefore, this channel of communication became one of the most prevalent. And also another thing why this work was kind of novel is because in our field of natural language processing, usually research on AI, on textual information for AI is done on Twitter data. It's a really common way of doing that. But in those countries, Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus, Twitter is not that much popular. So therefore, I just saw that using Telegram post here, it's going to be really interesting way of analyzing situation there. So again, just quickly go over the basic plan of the research. So we gathered data from over 100 channels. Mostly the channels were selected on the topics that are either just war, pure war, meaning Russia-Ukraine war, or just overall politics that still mostly discuss Russia-Ukraine war those days. So originally we were trying to focus on 4 major type of violations. So yeah, when we collected those data, we realized that one thing that we can do, because posts in those channels are very often discussing something what is happening in the field in Ukraine. So we realized that, for example, using AI, we can create a model that can detect mentions of human rights violations in the posts. For example, if somebody just casually discussing that there is a bombing in the hospital, then it's clearly indication of human rights violations. So immediately I want to clarify something, because usually when I talk about my research, I receive one question very often: how do you know it's true? So on this stage, on this research, we are not aiming to catch fakes or detect whether it's true or not. The whole point here is to collect all the mentions, all the suspicious posts that are indicating human rights violations. So fake detection, or checking whether it's truth or not, it's great. It's just next stage. It's not a portion of this stage. So yeah, and originally we decided to focus on the 4 types of human rights violations. So obviously there are way more than that, but the 3rd category was torture, rape, and execution, that we kind of combine in one label here, and mistreatment of prisoners. So on the right here, we can see examples of those posts. One is in the original language. Original posts can come either in Russian or Ukrainian. Majority are in Russian, but some of them are in Ukrainian as well. And also we could see the translations in English. So after that, usually what we need to do with this kind of tasks is we need to annotate some of the data. Basically what it means, in order to train a machine learning model to do something, we need to show it what is true, show examples basically, and what is not true. And so for that, we need to have some data that was annotated by humans. And so in the first attempt, in the first paper that we tried writing, we had just 3 annotators that were working on the very, very first project. It was just me who was annotating, and then we were just trying to see if it's interesting at all. But for the sake of good science, I cannot do research on my own annotations, because then there is a conflict of of interest. So we found 3 annotators that were helping us with annotation. So here is the example of the interface of how our annotators, our volunteers, were annotating data for us. So here is an example of the post, and they could choose, they could mark part of it and say whether it's killing of civilians or one of the types of the violations. as well as we also collected the label of the which side the author of this post can take, for example, pro-Russian, pro-Ukrainian, neutral, or there is a label called garbage. Basically, it means that this post is just not related. It could be because all the posts were selected randomly. Sometimes the post could be just advertising, something like this. So we just didn't want to work with that ones. Yeah, and eventually after we did that, we just applied some of the pre-trained models that exist. We just adjusted those models to our data, particularly to the language, and we achieved, I mean, pretty good results, but not as great as we would like them to be. So, as I said, I will not focus too much on the technical side. I'm just saying that for our models, we usually compare something like F1 score, which is metrics. But again, I'm not going to go into those details. You can just see that that was the original, one of the original paper that we had. Obviously, after that, I kept thinking, how could we improve those details? And it was clear that there is a lot of potential in this data set and this approach. And overall, there are many other attempts to do some interesting research can be done with this data set. So how can we improve outcome of AI model or AI approach? So basically, there are few approaches that can be done, but most significant ones is probably we either get better data. Better can mean larger data set, but also it can mean of higher quality annotation, right? So data can affect results of AI model, but also which kind of AI model we are using. It also can be important because sometimes some of the models can work better with one kind of data and others are better with something else. And plus, we tried some additional models that we didn't try before. So yeah, those are two major ways of how can we proceed from our first paper in order to get some more insights from our interesting data set that we gathered. So first one that I mentioned is better data. As I said, better data can mean different things. First thing is just larger data sets. So we did not, so you may ask, why do you need larger data if you have all Telegram available to you? Just find another channel, that's it. Which could be true, but the issue is here the following. Obviously, mentions of human rights violations are not a majority, which is a good thing, I guess. So it's appearing less than 3% of the data. So around 3% of the posts, those are the positive examples. I mean, positive meaning something what we're searching for in the data, right? So 3% of the data, approximately, those are the examples of the mentions of human rights violations. So with that data being so much imbalanced, so one class, which is negative class, is so much larger than the positive class, we need to do something to improve the training process, because the model learns a lot about what is not human rights violations, but there is not enough examples to see what is a human rights violation. So there are a couple of techniques that exist in our field that could be helpful. So obviously, we can just get more data annotated. That's going to be next slide. But there are other ways. It's not related to humans. It's related to synthetic data generation. Synthetic means that we are not creating new data. We are just taking that data that already existed. For example, we take the positive examples and then just apply a certain existing techniques to that data that could extend those examples. For example, one of the techniques that was already proven to be useful in our field is called back translation. Basically, it's actually really simple. I can explain. All what it means is that we take those examples that are useful for us, we translate through multiple languages. I usually like to take languages through different semantic groups because then the results going to be more interesting. So for example, we can take a Russian post, translate to Japanese, then translate to Hebrew, then translate back to Russian. So the result would be similar to the original. So hopefully the meaning stays the same, but it's gonna be phrased a bit differently, right? Maybe we all experience that when we use Google Translate. Sometimes, you know, it may translate the same meaning, but it's a different sayings, a different way of saying. And actually, this small difference is useful for machine learning model to learn because it sees that example as a different example, yet it's learning the same meaning. So basically, this is really helpful. So using this translation, I was able to enlarge data set by 4 times. Not the whole data set, obviously, the positive examples, which eventually was very useful for our results. So that's one of the ways to generate data synthetically. Synthetically, as I said, meaning just using some mathematics, not actually getting more data. And the second way that we tried here, this one is more novel. We used ChatGPT, which is a generative model, to generate more examples of human rights violations in the style of Telegram posts. So with generative models, what we can do is that we can provide examples, we can provide style, we can describe the background and ask for a certain language, a linguistic style, and then the model can generate you extra examples. So actually in science, using data augmentation, so we call it enlarging your data set, we call it augmentation. So so in our field, getting more data using generative models, it's kind of popular right now because it's independent in a way, and also it is randomly generated. So it's possible to use this data for training of machine learning model. So yeah, we use that as well, which is also turned out to be helpful. And as I said, those were synthetic ways of extending the data set, but also as I mentioned before, we just annotated more data. So as I said, in the very first draft of this research, I was the one and just friends in the lab who were annotating those data just to see, is there something interesting? Is it worth exploring at all? Now we were able to find 3 volunteers that actually did the totally independent annotation. And also what I find really interesting is that out of those 3 volunteers who performed the annotation, all of them were kind of different political views. So 2 of them were Russians, one of them was Ukrainian. Out of those 2 Russians, one was kind of moderately pro-Russian, one of them was strongly pro-Ukrainian, and the Ukrainian was pro-Ukrainian. So I found that this is interesting also for the sake of research, because we obviously wanted to keep this research as objective as possible. We all have our own opinion, but the goal here is just to build a generic, an objective AI that can just detect human rights violations. Doesn't matter which side is committing human rights violations, because it actually doesn't matter. What matters is that there is a violation. So yeah, I found that this was nice that we got those volunteers with a kind of different views in terms of political views. And yeah, sorry, I actually took the table straight out of the paper, so maybe it's a bit confusing here. But in a nutshell, we performed multiple tests with multiple models and with multiple data sets. Basically, all the description that I provided before on the ways how we enlarge our data set, we just were trying to see whether it helps, and if it helps, by how much. So eventually we realized that that the back translation helped the most, as well as adding ChatGPT in some cases. And basically, our evaluation metric here increased from 0.53 in the very first draft of the paper to 0.71, which is a good improvement. As I said, we still will keep improving that, but this is quite significant. I also want to point out that sometimes maybe it's a little bit hard to understand, because we may think, okay, it's really easy to guess is it human rights violations or not. So why then just 50%, 53% is a good result. But when you think about all the data imbalance, as I said, in the original data set, it was just 3% of the positive examples. So it's good, it's you cannot just guess in that case with 50% probability. So therefore, yeah, it's a really good number to begin with. But of course, reaching a 0.71 is way better, and hopefully we'll be able to increase that further. So how do we plan to increase that? So here, what I found eventually kind of fascinating in this stage of the research. So as I said, to improve the data, we could enlarge synthetically or in any other ways, but we can also get a better quality data set just by getting more annotated data and getting higher quality of annotations, meaning make sure that our annotators are trained, that they have all received unified instructions, that they all perform test tasks and they reached certain agreement, that there is no the inter-annotated agreement score between all the annotators are quite high. So this is what defines the quality of the annotation. So yeah, that's what became our next goal here. So for that, I started a call for volunteers just in June 2023. And what was really surprising for me in a good way is that just by August, we received over 100 applications for volunteers from Belarus and Russia and Ukraine, people who were willing to help us to annotate data. And, those are volunteers, so they're not paid, they're just happy to help. And I found that fascinating. And that's why I said that AI plus human collaboration, that's going to be the most powerful combination, I guess, because AI by itself can do a lot, but not as much as AI together with human. And plus the fact that this is a kind of humanitarian, in a way, project, the fact that many people agreed to volunteer for that, I found that this is fascinating, and I know I was really happy to see that. Um, so this is pretty much where we at right now. We are right now working with all of those volunteers to make sure they are trained, to make sure that our next stage of the annotation is going to be even higher quality, as well as it's going to be a larger quantity. So therefore, our next stage of the research should be even way more significant, because also even if you're getting a good score, like good evaluation score, if you are getting this score with a larger data, it's obviously more significant, because with a smaller data set, there are way more variations on the results that you could see. So I think this is a really good sign that just regular people who are not a part of this are also seeing value in this and also willing to participate and help. That really made me kind of happy about that. And a little bit about the plans. As I said, we plan to keep improving the quality of the model and of the annotations. So there are some other ways of improvement that we see in terms of AI model. I did not include that because that one is definitely going to be too technical, so I didn't see the need to add it here. And also regarding the question that I always got that I mentioned before, how do you know it's truth or not? I think that the next project that we wanna combine with this one would be a fake detection system, which would be working really great, because if we, with current system that we have, can collect all the suspicious posts, all the posts that already have something in it, something that is close enough to the mentions of human rights violations. After we just filter out that data, we can now pass it to another system that could possibly have some fake detection. Again, it is a hard task, just because the war is still ongoing and it's still hard to verify what is fake and what is not, but at least some. So it's impossible, obviously, to make it 100% working. But even if we can detect just a small portion of fakes and just remove them, it's already, I think, a good start. And if or reverse, if just some portion of it that we absolutely sure are true, and we can keep them, that's also useful. So it's not always either 100 or 0. So it's part of it. It's also great. So yeah, that's probably in a nutshell about the current stage of the research. And I just wanted to mention that if somebody who can speak Russian or Ukrainian is interested in helping, we always need more, because as I said, there is always need for more volunteers, because the more data, the more accurate the model is, and the better results are. So in case somebody is interested, then just please send me an email. We would be happy to have more volunteers. Yeah, so that's it from my side.
Thank you very much. And I think we have had a rare glimpse of how it works. And I just have a couple of questions as I engage Polly in a dialogue with our audience now. So first is you did mention in the beginning that Telegram and its interface is different than WhatsApp and Signal and this kind of encrypted channels. Can you a little bit elaborate more, because our audience, most of us are laymen and we don't understand the difference. We just keep using it. So can you go ahead and explain a little bit why Telegram?
Why Telegram? Okay, so first of all, because just because it has the most amount of users in Russian-speaking countries. So, for example, for us, it would not make sense to go to Twitter, which is more common, and analyze it, because it's just as per statistic that I found, it's just 11% of population of Russian-speaking countries that have Twitter. So unlike Telegram, that is over, I believe, 80%, something like this. So those are just uncomparable things. Now, if you go back to comparison with WhatsApp, so WhatsApp does not have public channels. So you cannot use data from WhatsApp for any analysis, because it's going to be private. Telegram does have public channels that are working currently as a news feed. So basically, people can just join the channel and then they can just read it, and it's basically just a way of getting news. And also, as I said, currently, Telegram is one of the most secured ones. So most of the political discussion, if somebody is trying to have in those countries, they're trying to keep it over Telegram. Oh, because it could be really dangerous. For example, if you start a public channel in those countries, and if it would be not secured, and if by chance some of the government structures could identify you, that could be dangerous. But it is quite hard. It is secured messenger, and it wasn't. I'm not aware of the occasions when it was hacked by government or something like this. I do know that sometimes police in Belarus can just stop on the street and ask for your phone and just check which channels you are in. Yes, but it's a different way. So I'm not aware of the situation when this messenger was hacked. And I think that's the major reason why all the kind of interesting information, the actual information, the things that people actually think or see, they are more willing to share there rather than, again, Twitter or, I don't know, VK, which is a Russian Facebook, kind of Ukrainian Russian Facebook, because those are way more controlled, monitored, and easily accessed by government. So yeah, therefore Telegram here is having more, it's way more relevant to this conflict, I would say.
Polly, just I would say an additional question here. Why Telegram is popular in Central Europe, of course, including Ukraine and Russia, but why it is gaining popularity? Is it just because of having a feature of public channel, or something else?
Because of the security, as I mentioned, because there was not, I'm not aware of any instances when government could hack your account in Telegram. It's very secure. If you're using anything else, it's quite possible to get into your account in those countries. So it's so far, by so far, it's been one of the most secure way. For example, the protests in Belarus in 2020, all the protests were just orchestrated via Telegram, because that was the only way that the only thing the government could not block, and that could not cause troubles to people who were actually using it.
Fantastic. So moving on to my next question to you, and you have titled this presentation AI and Human Collaboration, and you have kind of explained the role of annotators and why it is important to have more data and through annotators work. So I'm going to request you to kindly explain and elaborate a little bit more, because we all think nowadays that we just get into somewhere, get the data, use AI, and get a result. I mean, it's not the case, I guess, what you are referring to. So can you expand a little bit about this idea of AI and human collaboration?
Yeah, sure. So what you said can work if if you're approaching some trivial task. For example, if you wanna, for example, one of the common tasks is to detect sentiment in text, for example, emotions in text. So for that, we do not need annotation. Why? Because there are already models that were pre-trained before. There are already models that can do this task for you. So you just take the data and you just take the model, or maybe some package that can be just used together with the model, and then you just can get an emotion of this text. So for that, you don't need retrain anything. What we are doing is a kind of a novel task. So there is no way to have model being pre-trained on human rights violations, and also it's a kind of specific to the language as well as to the location. So for example, um, um, a good example here would be Bucha. So everybody knows what happened in Bucha, and everybody knows that if there is any references to it, it's highly likely to have some mentions of human rights violations. So that is something that model can learn from the examples, but the examples need to be marked by somebody. So when you're doing some kind of new task, AI need to see examples. Now, if we would have, I don't know how to say it, gigantic amount of data, for example, like ChatGPT, like language models who are pre-trained, then there are other ways how they can learn, but we are not just talking about that amount of data. It's just those models were trained on the whole internet available. Here, of course, it's not like that, and also the task is way more kind of specific and also novel. So, and another thing is what is interesting here is that sometimes even humans are not always agree on one example. Somebody may say, I believe that this is a human rights violations here, and somebody says, no, I think it's just a artifact of human rights violations, but it's not a human rights violations here. So, and the fact that even humans are not always agree on something, it shows that this is kind of complicated task. So yeah, this sometimes ambiguity about the task, then plus um, geolocation, some specific parts of the geolocation and language. So those three things combined together are making this task kind of hard and not being able to pre-train. So it's not a trivial task. So therefore, we cannot just find a model or find any AI tool and just use it out of the box here.
Fantastic. I mean, it's such a fascinating way of looking into data. My last question to you today, as we approach the end of our session, Polly, you have already mentioned the future of your project, but what do you see in the future? In this part of the research, your team and of course you folks have worked on data and picked up the human rights violation issues discussed in Telegram. So what is next, and how it can help, for example, the United Nations, the agency that you have recently joined, and other, let's say, UN Human Rights Commissions or Amnesty International, or whichever agencies work in these sectors, they can be benefited from the output of your research. How you can tie up these outputs and to those agencies' work.
Yeah, for sure. So actually, the bigger picture that I already kind of saw in terms of this project is that we can build this model that could be doing monitoring live and non-stop, and not only on Telegram, but hopefully on other platforms as well, and hopefully not only in Russian and English, but also, in Farsi or in Mandarin, in any other languages as well, and then just create some kind of storage where those suspicious things would be stored, and then if for example, in my how I saw it, if some of the mentions are becoming way too often, then it's gonna rise like a red flag or something to the next level and make a human to address it. So hopefully, I would imagine that this could be implemented in one of those NGOs that you mentioned, and I would imagine that we would not obviously forward each mentions of human rights violations, but if we can get first system working great, then the second system that removes all the fakes, and then maybe another system then just look at the clusters of those that are appearing most often in the most geolocation, and then once it hits a certain threshold, it just pushes to the human expert, possibly one of the employees of the NGOs you mentioned, and then humans should make an action from there. Because social media just having so much data, and I cannot imagine how humans can keep track of all of that. But with the help of AI, it's easier to process all that amount of data and just set up some pointers towards the area where human attention is really needed currently.
Fantastic. So we are going to close the session, but we always go back and request the presenter or speaker to say a few words as a conclusion. So what would be your concluding comments today?
So yeah, as I said in the beginning, I twisted a bit the whole presentation. Is that AI is great, as AI can definitely help, but AI cannot be as powerful as AI plus humans together. So I guess that's the major remark from my presentation today. And just thank you for all the volunteers that are ever helping to develop AI models, because those are the future.
Thank you so much, Polly Nemkova. Polly Nemkova joined us from Texas, and she's a PhD candidate. And with her team in University of North Texas, they have developed, and they're still developing some wonderful model with the inclusion of artificial intelligence. And today's talk, Polly actually showed us how brilliant it would be once we human collaborate with the technology that we have developed. And we have just seen her findings in a very simple form. And the audience, I have posted her paper in the Facebook and YouTube links. You can click and it will directly lead you to the original paper that she published recently with her colleagues. So have a look if you are interested into all these details. But my intention was today just to share her research, because I think she's doing a wonderful job. And I would like to invite her to our future initiatives and efforts of Conflict and Resilience Research Institute Canada, because we are researching extremism and violence, genocide prevention, human rights violation in some of the cases globally. So it is such a wonderful connection that Polly Nemkova opened for us from Texas. So on behalf of Conflict and Resilience Research Institute Canada, Polly, thank you so much for being with us, spending almost an hour with us. And we definitely follow up with your research So with this, dear audience, please follow us in our YouTube channel and Facebook. And this was streamed in 3 channels. We always host entrepreneur researchers like Pauline Mkova because they are actually doing groundbreaking research. And I think from our platform and like many other platforms, our team would definitely come up with wonderful tools to detect human rights violation in the future. With this, thank you so much once again. Take care and bye-bye. Thank you, Polly. Thank you.